since I have shared a video. And I spoke with some dear church family last night who said, "We noticed you've not had a video in some time." And the woman said, "I love to listen to your voice." She said, "It's so soothing." And I said, "I understand. I appreciate the encouragement. It's just been a difficult time lately." So I thought about it, and I decided I should go ahead and do a video. I'm posting separately in this same day a song that I came across earlier today. Sang it years and years and years ago when I was growing up in a little church in West Virginia. And the lyrics hit me today, and so I recorded that. You'll see that in another video. Get to hear me sing a little bit. But tonight we're going to talk about home. When I first started doing these videos, the goal was to bring you into my home. I'm a real estate agent. I want you to think about the topic of home. It's not just houses. Home is something else. I've lived a number of places. I was born in Huntington, West Virginia. Cabell Huntington Hospital on a Friday. And my parents took me home to a tiny little rental house that we were in. And we didn't live there a whole lot longer until we moved to another property. And my parents had a single wide trailer there on that property. We lived there for a few years, and then they moved to the home where they still live. And that's the home I grew up in on Tom's Creek. And for many, many years, I called that home. And still today, if I call Nan and ask her how she's doing, how this is working, and all the different questions she's going to ask at some point in that conversation, "Well, when are you coming home?" And it doesn't take long for us to realize that we use the word home a lot. If you just think about it, we use it a lot. And it means different things depending on the usage. After high school, I went away to college at Hampton-Sydney, and it was one of the finest things I've ever done. I just cannot stop talking about Hampton-Sydney College. I loved it. Maybe for some of the same reasons that other people did, but maybe for very different reasons. I certainly wasn't your average college student. I was doing something else in my inner self, in my spiritual walk, in my relationships. I was really trying to do what the gates of the college state. I was trying to enter in as a boy so that by the time I left, I would be a man. And obviously manhood is a process. I didn't just pop out on graduation day a fully grown man, but I was definitely more of a man when I left than I was when I entered. The very first year of college, I came back to West Virginia for a break. And when I returned to college, my boss, I worked in an office on campus. My boss was Rucker Sneed, L. Rucker Sneed III. He was a very, very, very good man and a very dear man. And he's with the Lord now. I grieve that still. But I came back from that break and spoke with him, and he said, "Well, how does it feel to be back home?" And I was caught by that. I said, "Well, I went home for break." "Oh, no. He said, "This is your home." He said, "And you may not realize it now, but it will be your home forever. This is your home." That was uncomfortable for me at that time. It's not now. There's something about Hampton-Sydney that truly did become home. I moved into Hampton-Sydney, and it didn't take too long for Hampton-Sydney to move into me. After college, I moved back to the tri-state area, West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, taught in a middle school, public middle school for 1 year, and I lived in a home Do you want to call this a home? If any of you knew me during that year, you would say, that wasn't a home. I lived in a building that was used at that time as a retreat center for churches, and I was the caretaker for the building. I was not a very good one. I know this. I definitely guy cleaned. I was not very good at that job. Excuse me. But I had a little tiny one-room dwelling and a side little tiny bathroom and no windows. I lived there for about 9 months and then moved to Philadelphia. Outside of Philadelphia, I lived in Exton, Pennsylvania. I don't like that when people say they live in Philadelphia when they don't live anywhere near Philadelphia. I lived in Exton, Pennsylvania, 35, 40 minutes outside the city, depending on how you get there, and moved into a dorm at a boarding school. And I was there for 5 years and really created a home. Lived with my students in a dorm cottage. I was a cottage parent. And after that, moved to Connecticut, lived in a house for about 9 months or so. That house never felt like home. At the end of that school year, I was in grad school at that time. I went to Wesleyan University for my master's degree. At the end of that school year, I moved to Martha's Vineyard. Lived on Martha's Vineyard for the summer, one of the hardest summers of my life. But I had a job there. I lived in a little house called Pepperbush. And my room was small and in the back of the house. And Martha's Vineyard was a lovely place, certainly. But it was a hard summer for me internally. And the job that I was doing that summer was really hard on me. I had been grieving over a difficult season, and I just wasn't in a good place. But for a summer, I lived on Martha's Vineyard. Can we call that home if you're just there for a summer? Moved back to Connecticut in the fall of that year and stayed with a friend. I went to the house thinking that it was going to be temporary. Slept on a couch. Do you say couch or sofa? I just asked someone this recently. I use them both, and I use them almost interchangeably. Doesn't matter. Back to Connecticut. I stayed with a buddy and his 2 housemates, thinking it was going to be 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks. I'll get a job. I'll get an apartment. Turned into 3 years. I lived at 22 Bicycle Street in Plainville, Connecticut for 3 years. They were really, really hard, and they were really, really good. That was home. There's no question. Bicycle Street was home. During that time, I was so poor that I slept on the floor. I had a mattress, and the longer I stayed there, I finally dragged the box spring in and put it under the mattress. But my room was the living room. The other 3 guys had taken the 3 bedrooms of the home, and the home was not very big. And so the only space for me was the living room. And I put a mattress and box springs touching the front of the couch. And the other side of the bed, the other side of the mattress, was touching the front of the TV table, the TV stand. That's how small the living room was. And you have to imagine my private space was not private. I could see the front door from my bed. And so the mailman, the postman, comes to the door, and I'm sitting in my underwear eating cereal on a Saturday morning. How you doing? I learned a lot during that season. And then I moved to Greensboro. Greensboro is a home, definitely. I love my home here in Greensboro. Lived in an Airbnb for a month and a half, and then found the house where I currently live. And it's been such a wonderful place to live. This house specifically. I love my house. I've just gone through a list of dwellings, all these different places where I've lived. I could be more specific. We could talk about in college the different buildings I lived in. One of them's not even there. It burned down. The topic of home is so dear to me. Do you know I'm a real estate agent? I did not get into the business just because I need to make money, though I do. Home matters so much to me. And I think about home a lot. I think about home a whole lot. While I lived in Connecticut, I visited a place called L'Abri. It's French for the shelter. And it was begun by Francis and Edith Schaefer. If you don't know those names, I encourage you to look them up. They're phenomenal people. I could go more into detail, but nonetheless, I visited L'Abri for a Friday night lecture. And the topic was the theology of home. What does that mean? Maybe theology is a word you don't use very often. How do we study the character of God through the study of home? And the woman who spoke, I think that this was a life-changing event for me. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it really was. I drove up there to Southborough, Massachusetts, sat there in that lecture. If you look up the podcast or the recordings of those Friday night lectures and you find one from about 2019 or so on the theology of home, you will hear Zach Roberts' voice as he asks a question toward the end of the recording. The woman spoke on definitions of home, the theology of home. And something deep inside of me was very stirred by this. She said, at the end of the workday, we say, I'm going home. I'm ready to go home. At Christmas time, we say, I'm going home to be with family. Oh, there's no place like home for the holidays. And then you attend a funeral, and we call it a homegoing. How confused we are over the definitions of home. There's a passage of Scripture, and I can't place where it is right now. It's in the Old Testament. And it says, it's something like, blessed are the lonely, for God will give them a home. Man. Burning desire of my heart is to go home. I've called a bunch of places home, as we just stated. But one day, after the clods fall on the casket, I will stand face to face with Jesus, whom I have already known, heart to heart, and be home. I met with someone on Saturday who means a great deal to me. She's about 83 years old. She's not a believer. She's not a Christian. We believe very differently. I sat with her years and years and years ago. And as I realized that we disagreed on our views of who God is, I did not pull out a Bible. I did not shove my finger in her face. I looked her in the eye and I said, I want very much to see you in heaven one day. I sat with her on Saturday, and to my knowledge, she is just as firm as ever in her opposition to the way I see the Bible and to the way I see Jesus and to the understanding that I have of heaven and hell and those sorts of things. I word that really carefully because I don't want to claim that I have the perfect understanding of the Bible or of God. But I have a very reverent approach. I want to be really respectful. When I die, I would rather someone say he took the Bible too seriously than for someone to say he didn't take it seriously enough. And by that someone, I mean God. And if I believe what I say I believe, then I believe there will be an eternity after this life. There was a time when you were not, but there never will be a time when you are not. And within the first 7 minutes of that conversation with this dear, dear friend of mine, she said, well, I'm looking forward to the afterlife. I said, really? I want to hear more about that. I said, what does that mean to you? She said, freedom. I said, oh, really? Freedom from what? She said, freedom from all of these things that we carry. And I said, I love that. I agree. She said, well, what does it mean to you? I said, the afterlife? What does that mean to you? I said, it means home. And she shook her head. This is an individual who told me one time that she hoped there was no afterlife. She said, I hope there is no heaven, no hell. Just put me in the ground and have done with me. Now, I'm not here to preach to you tonight, and I didn't preach to her. I very lovingly tried to share what I believe to be true, but I did not force. I'll say this. If there is a heaven, wouldn't you want to go? Simple as that. If there is a heaven, wouldn't you want to go? Now, I can add on to that. Heaven is heaven because Jesus is there. If Jesus isn't there, no point going. We could pave some gold streets down here. Wouldn't be good enough. I know this is a very Jesus-y video that I'm doing here. I really needed to be doing some videos on how I need some real estate business, but for some reason my heart is here on this topic tonight. Thinking about home. The burning desire of my heart is to go home. At that Labrie lecture that I attended several years ago, the woman gave a quotation from C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to butcher the quotation, but look it up. And I think it's from The Weight of Glory. He talks about us ever increasing, moving forward, progressing toward the final destination. And someday we will stand before this door that we have been yearning to see opened before us. And finally, after all the waiting, that door is going to be opened. And the sweetest words you'll ever hear will be uttered. Welcome home. Welcome home. I will end with this. In real estate, I say it is more about people than it is sales to me. I really care a lot about people. And I really do love homes. And I'm okay with calling this house my home. But it's not my eternal home. Nonetheless, in real estate, I work with people who are dreaming of having a place they can call their own. Dreaming of a place where they can raise their children. Build equity. There's no better way in America to build equity than through home ownership, to build wealth than through home ownership. Real estate's the number one ticket. But I also think the owning of a home, the buying and selling of a home, should humble us to realize this home is just sticks, bricks, breakable glass. The very dearest things in our homes will all rot away someday. Allow it to make you think about the things of eternity. Allow your home to humble you and realize that the thing we put the most time into, we clean it, we paint it, we decorate it, we undecorate it. All this time spent in this home. Are you spending that kind of time getting ready for your eternal home? The song, and you'll see it, it's accompanying this video. See the bright lights shine. It's just about home time. I can see the Father standing at the door. This world is a wilderness. I'm ready for deliverance. Oh, I've never been this homesick before. I close with this story, my favorite memory. I was probably 4 years old. I spent the night at my aunt and uncle's house on Paddle Creek. I slept on their brown and orange and rust-colored red sofa. And they had a ceiling fan with those smoky colored light globes. I had my Mickey Mouse t-shirt on. And I had trouble going to sleep. I was scared. I was nervous. And I wasn't at home. And in the middle of the night, I got up and went through the house and found Willamay and woke her up. I said, I'm scared. She said, you're scared? What's wrong? I said, I don't know. I'm just scared. She didn't offer to take me home. She offered to take me to Mama's. It's my favorite memory. We get into her little Pinto in the middle of the night. I had on this puffy coat and my Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and we drive up Paddle Creek, and she must have called ahead, because as we cross the bridge on Mama's driveway, there's the screen door, and there's the silhouette of, There's the silhouette of Mama standing in the doorway, waiting on us. And my grandmother, she said this openly. She said, I was not one to coddle. She was not touchy-feely, squishy. But she was with me. And she opened the door and scooped me up. And she said, oh, you don't have to be afraid. You're with Mama now. If that's not a picture of heaven, I don't know what is. And I want to go home. Don't you? You all have a great week. There's a light in the window, the table spread in splendor, someone standing by the open